and welcome everyone to our NetPoint and GPM conference in my session, Design Planning and Decision Making for a Water Tunnel Program with NetPoint. I'm Weeraya Orwatthana, and I'm happy to share my experience with you today. There will be a lot of examples, information, and graphics. So without further ado, let's get started. So what you get from this session today are the planning concepts and approach that you can apply to your projects, regardless of the project types and the project durations. I will start with the planning considerations for multi-year projects. Then we'll talk about some planning and scheduling concepts. I will then introduce you to a case study that's from a water tunnel program. And after that, I will show you how we can apply the planning concepts and approach to the project in reality. And that will also lead to the team decision-making. And we'll wrap it up with the conclusions. So at any point in time, if you have any questions, please leave it at the Q&A box and I will address it at the end. So a little bit of my background. I'm Weeraya Orwatthana, but please feel free to call me Wee. I received a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering from Chulalongkorn University in Thailand, and also a master's degree in construction management from Northeastern University here in Boston. And during my 7 to 8 years of experience with PMA, I've been working as a project control specialist in many types of the projects. I have had opportunity to run multiple interactive planning sessions and doing project controls in terms of cost, schedule, and risk for both short-term and long-term projects. So having said that, I want to talk about the planning considerations for multi-year projects. In general, regardless of the type of the projects, we have to manage the projects in terms of cost, schedule, scope, and quality in many factors. So it could be for planning, for controlling, and for risk and uncertainties. But especially with the long-term projects, let's think about over 10 years of the project. At a certain point in time, the project will be changed and the project team will change, come in and out. So we have to prepare for the transition and turnover of the team member. We have to prepare for the knowledge transfer. And because of that, documentation becomes very important because you have to prepare for that so that it be consistent. And also the documentation should tell the story by itself. So before showing you how we will use the planning to address all of these issues, what I want to do is that I want to show you on the planning and scheduling concepts. One of the questions that I've been asked a lot is how much detail we need when we do the planning. So it depends on the people who are working with, reporting to, and communicating with. So 5 schedule levels. We have schedule level 1, which is a high-level executive summary. We have schedule level 2, 3, 4, and 5, which will be more detailed. But from the program perspective, we'll take a look and pay attention more on schedule level 1, 2, and 3. So starting with schedule level 1, executive summary, very high level. So we'll take a look at this from the overall perspective, overall schedule, contractual milestones. The duration could be in quarters or by years. Then schedule level 2, that's for the management summary. So in schedule level 2, we'll focus and lay out all of the project phases, key components, and milestones. The duration could be in months or quarters. Schedule level 3, that's for the progress and coordination. And basically, will be much more detailed. You have to also identify the critical paths and link. And usually we use this for the monthly update. And for schedule level 1, 2, and 3, I personally call it as high level, medium level, and a detail level. But those are the unofficial names that I usually use with my project teams. Apart from that, you will have schedule level 4 and 5, but those will have to be developed and maintained by the consultants or the contractors. Another questions that I've been asked a lot is about when. When do we have to do the planning? And when do we have to revisit the schedule? So basically, thinking about the long-term projects, we might not want to detail everything from day one because it's quite impossible. What we can do is that we do the planning in phases. And when we know more and have a better understanding of the project, we add more detail into it. And that's what we call rolling wave planning. So if you take a look at the graphic, the current dates, which is the data date, you will see more detail for the upcoming periods. But then activities and schedule on the far right, which will be in the future, that will be with less information and less detail. So by seeing this, you know that at some certain point in time in the future, you have to revisit and do the planning again. And that's why we call that planning is iterative. So to be on top of the game, what I would recommend is that you add some milestones into your schedule. For example, you know that in the future, you will have scope A. You put a milestone as a flag or reminder, let's say perhaps 3 months before getting into the scope A. So that's once you get into and approaching to that milestone, you know that you have to start planning again before it's getting too late. And as we're talking about this graphic, which is from NetPoint, I want to give you a quick introduction. So let's take a look at this graphic. So NetPoint uses graphical path method to place activities anywhere on this paper, or we call it canvas, and it uses planned dates. You can see that you can adjust and customize the visualization of this graphic. You can change the colors, text, details. And because of this, it's very informative. Anytime that you adjust and change the schedule, you will see real-time changes, and it's self-explanatory. All of this would help the team to communicate and collaborate effectively. This is another example. So this is a template that I have been keeping with me all the time. When somebody asks some questions about basic planning or scheduling concepts, such as total float, free float, or critical path, I would usually pick up this template and use it as an explanation. You can also see that at the bottom, that's the histogram. So it's for the cost or resource loading. And anytime that you adjust the activities on top, that histogram will be changed accordingly. So as we talk about some planning concepts, I want to introduce you to a case study. And this is a Metropolitan Water Tunnel Program by Massachusetts Water Resources Authority. A quick note before jumping into detail. Any slides that you will see with the MWTP at the top right, top left corner, that would be the slides with the real project data and information. However, most of the slides that you'll be seeing in this presentation will be without that note. Even if without the real project results, data, or information, you will still get the concept and approach that can be applied to your project. So the history of this project, if you take a look at the black circle, inside it, that's the metropolitan Boston area. And we have the existing tunnels. So we have City Tunnel extension to the north, and also the Dorchester Tunnel to the south. However, in 2010, we had a water main break, and there's a lot of economic loss because we had to issue a boil water order. And because of that, we know that we want to build a redundancy tunnel system so that we can allow for maintenance and repair of the existing system without disrupting over 2.5 million customers. So we want to take a look closer to that program area. So in the yellow shade, that's the program study area. And then you have the dashed red line, which is the conceptual tunnel alignment. You have the north tunnel and the south tunnel. So in general, the tunnel would be roughly 14.5 miles. And it's going to be deep hard rock pressure tunnel, 200 to 500 feet underground. We'll be using tunnel boring machines, and the finished diameter of the tunnel would be approximately 10 feet. With the estimate comes in at 2017, that's roughly $1.5 billion in 2017 dollars. The duration is roughly 17 to 23 years. So as of now, we are still at the preliminary design phase. Later on, we'll know that it will be in final design and also construction phase. that could start roughly in 2027. So this is a very huge project, and that would require a lot of team members, communication, and collaboration. So the next one, I would want to show you how we use all of the approach, consideration, and what we've been talking so far, how we apply that into this project in reality. So we talk about NetPoint for initial planning. Previously, we talked about top-down plan, schedule levels, right? Schedule level 1, 2, and 3. The next one, I want to show you the techniques that we call top-down planning. So we will start with schedule level 1, level 2, level 3, and that will lead to the program master schedule. So let's take a look at it in more detail. Schedule level 1, planning. And this is for executive summary level, very high level of the schedule. And this can be done in Excel or in NetPoint or some other programs. But let's say at this time, we're going to use Excel because it's easy to access and everyone usually have it. So in this case, if you take a look at the Excel, we identify all of the phases in this project. So we have preliminary design, final design, and construction. So let's say in this is roughly 8 years of the project. You can see that the duration that could be in quarters, half year, or year duration. And that's it, very high level. The next step, we want to do more detail. We're going to do schedule level 2 for schedule planning. However, this will be the first time that we'll be using NetPoint for planning. So what I would recommend is that first step, we should do some preparation first, because we know that at the end, we'll be using Primavera P6 as a database and project records to do the report. So what I would do is that I would create some dummy activities in P6 and then set up the P6 with the right calendar and holidays. After that, we'll transfer those activities into NetPoint. And then you will standardize that NetPoint template to be a template that can be used later on for the entire length of the project. So by doing this, you will have activities in NetPoint that will show exactly the same day's duration when you transfer that into P6. And then we'll do the actual development of the schedule level 2, which is the management level, or I call it medium level. So as you can see here, more detail will be added in each of the scope. So we have preliminary design, final design, owner activities, and construction. And if you compare between level 1 and level 2, you can see that you can also add summary bars in level 2, which is exactly the same as what you can see in level 1. So what I would want to point out is that it really depends on the complexity of your project. Sometimes you might have to do both schedule level 1 and 2, but sometimes you can just start with schedule level 2 and do a summarization. This is the schedule for level 2. However, in reality, as a part of the rolling wave planning, we need to have more detail for the upcoming periods. So what we'll be doing next is to further detail, let's say, the couple of years in the future. This means we'll do schedule level 3, development of the progress or coordination schedule. In this example, you will see just one scope for the property acquisition. But in reality, any scope that fall within that couple of years, you have to detail them all. And that could include owner activities, procurements, and so on. So as of now, you have schedule level 1, level 2, level 3, which is just the first round of schedule. Upon the team agreements and approvals, then you would transfer all of those schedule planning into Primavera P6, because that will be used for the database and for reporting. So 2 ways that you can do it. The first one is manual. So you just take a look at your NetPoint and transfer that into P6. Or the other way that you can do it, you can just export the NetPoint into P6 XER file, and then you import that into P6, which will be much easier. And all of this planning in NetPoint, you can use it later on as a what-if analysis and also in your meetings. So as we talk about these NetPoint graphics, let's talk about some tips that I think that would be useful for your program team in communication and collaboration. Let's start with the first one, milestones. I really recommend this because the team can easily see the contractual milestone and also the interim milestones. The next section is the summary. 2 ways that you can do it. The first one is the hammock, which is similar to the level of effort in P6. It means that any activities that belongs to that hammock, anytime that you adjust the activity, the hammock will be adjusted and reflected accordingly. The other way is a manual. So by manual, you just place activities that cover any activities that you want. And you can manually adjust the pattern or the color of that activity as well. Next feature is the shaded objects. I love it a lot. I think it's very helpful for the program team when you do a separation between each group of the scope of work. And also this feature, tail length, basically it's just the vertical line, but it's a feature that is included within the milestones property. So thinking about when you have scheduled multiple pages, and you have to flip through those pages. If you can see the vertical line for each of the milestone, then you can see the time differences between among the milestones. You can also see the differences between your scope of work, the time left between that versus your key milestones. Also, the schedule in reality will be much more complex. So anyone that has used P6 before, you will know that you have only 2 options. So either showing the logic or not showing the logic at all. But in NetPoint, you have much more than that. So you can show the logic in color, so which is in yellow in this case, or fade it in gray. So by doing this, you will highlight just the important logic that you want it to be legible for the program team, and your schedule will be much more legible. Another function is the gap. You can show the gap, which is the duration of the link, that would tell the story of the duration between that scope or that activities and the milestones. And also previously, we talked about documentation, team transfer, and consistency. So what I would recommend is that adding legend on your graphics. In this case, for example, anytime that you see the gray text, you know it right away that is for assumptions and logic notes. Or anytime that you see the red text or the yellow boxes, you know that it's something that the team needs to review and discuss. And last but not least is about notes and assumptions for the project records. In this case, you have 2 options that you can do it. The first one is the text. It means that you can place the text anywhere on the canvas. The other option is the text feature, but it includes it in the activity, and we call it as annotation. So for example, in this case, this text annotation belongs to field work group A. So anytime that you move the field work group A either up or down, that annotation will be moved along accordingly. So all of these that we mentioned about tips and approach that will help the project team to put everything in one record, and that will be informative for the team so that the team members can take a look and do some research later on in the project. So as we have all of the schedules, what I want to do next is show you how we can use the schedule to support the team's decision. And I will show this in terms of the case study. So Metropolitan Water Tunnel Program. So we know that as of now, we are at the preliminary design phase. Later on, we'll have final design and then construction phase. However, we have to look at this from the program level. For the program level, we have to think about cost, scope, schedule, quality for all of these phases. If you go back and take a look at the preliminary design, as this is the tunnel program, we know that the tunnel alignment might be various, but eventually we have to pick just one. So many factors that could play out. We have to think about environmental issues, technical issues, or some other owner preference that could also affect the location of the shaft sites, the directions of the shaft site, the connection point, or even if the packages, the number of packages that we'll be using. So this means you will have multiple alignment alternatives that eventually you have to pick just one as a selected alternative. We also know that at the end of the preliminary design, what we want to have is the anticipated construction schedule that will be further refined and detailed during the final design and construction. So if you take a step back and look at it from a scheduling perspective, right now you have some kind of schedule for the preliminary design and also the construction phase. But what you don't have right now is the schedule for the final design. But as we mentioned before, the program level, you have to think about all of these every phases. So that means you have to have program master schedule. And because of we are not sure yet how many number of final design and construction packages that you will have, this means that you will have multiple schedule scenarios from the program perspective, which eventually we have to nail it down to just one schedule option to be further executed in this project. And definitely you have to include risk management, risk analysis, and that will also require a lot of communication back and forth between your team members. So let's say right now we're at the preliminary design and we already select an alternative. And what we're gonna do next to support the decision making. So I will show you the next slide, which is the selected alternative. So in general, if you take a look at this, you can see that right now there are three segments of the tunnel: segment 1, segment 2, and segment 3. We also know the direction of each tunnel. However, what we don't know now is the number of final design packages or the number of construction packages that will be used. Also the sequence, we're not sure. Can it be done concurrently or must it be done in sequence? So that will be the thing that we have to analyze to further develop in many options before reaching to the final decision of this project. So how we do it? Previously, we do top down, right? Level 1, level 2, level 3, leading to just one master schedule. But right now, as we want to know more and we want to identify multiple schedule options, what we'll be doing is just the reverse. So we'll be doing bottom-up planning to identify multiple schedule options. So 4 steps that we'll be doing. The first one is to identify program schedule options. So you would have to take a look at multiple factors. The next step will be step 2. You would do the schedule level 3. Doing this, you have to go back to your project team, having a lot of discussion and communication with different type of people. And then you will do bottom up from level 3 to level 2 and 1 in step 3, which is the summarization and comparison. And then you'll go to step 4, review, repeat, and report, so that you can have the schedule for multiple schedule options. So let's take a look at it in more detail. Step 1, identify schedule options. So in general, per your projects, you will have different criteria and different schedule options. But in this case, for the water tunnel program, for example, you might have one or multiple final designs packages. You might have one or multiple construction packages. You might have one or multiple tunnel boring machines. And all of those that could affect the sequence. The sequence has to be sequential, or sometimes you can do some segments of the tunnel concurrently. We're not sure yet. With all of this combination, that means that you will have multiple schedule options. But in reality, you're not going to detail everything. You will nail it down to just potential options that are reasonable for your project team. And your project teams will be able to help you You can do a decision metric, identify the factors that might be involved. For example, the technical issues, environmental issues, locations, maintenance, or the execution preference. And then you can nail it down from multiple schedule options to just the potential schedule options. And after you have potential schedule options, you will start with picking just one to do more detail. Then we'll go to step 2, which is the development of schedule level 3. In this example, you will see just a portion of the design, and that's the level of detail in level 3 schedule. You will see the activities for meetings, activities for drawings and design, activities for review, workshops, reports, and also the milestones, which is in this case, the 60% and 90% submission. So this is just a basic example for you. However, in reality, you will have much more than that. So you will have multiple pages of schedule because that has to include all of the scope. It could include owner activities, procurement, land acquisition, and on and on. So what I would recommend is that you have to well manage and organize your schedules, adding legends on top, adding forecast summaries, and then lay out all of your scope in multiple pages. And that would be your schedule for level 3. So as of now, we completed schedule level 3. The next step will go up to do a summarization for schedule level 2 and level 1. So this is an example. Let's take a look at schedule level 2. So for schedule level 2 management summary, as you can see here, we will have less activities, very high level, big picture, and it's still within the NetPoint program. So for example, you will see the procurement activities, design activities, and also it depends on the complexity of your project. In this case, because it's a tunnel program, geology is very important. So you might want to highlight the geotech portion here and the field work. And also what I would recommend is that I usually add the results or assumptions or keynotes to the summarization level. I might add NTP dates, completion dates, or the critical path. So here is just the summarization of schedule level 2. Then you will also have to do up another level, which is the level 1 schedule for executive summary. So in this case, you can see that I changed from NetPoint to PowerPoint presentation, because usually we'll do this and present it to the executive team. So sometimes it's just easier and faster to do it in PowerPoint presentation. So in this case, you will see that the duration will be in quarters, half years, or years. We see that it's very huge, big picture. You see the start and finish of each phase. Also, you have the ability to put more context or contents into it. I usually put notes in this section. I might put critical path, concerns, or costs or resources that relate to that option. So all of this that we've been doing, we complete schedule level 3, 2, and 1. But that's just the first round that would lead you to one option. But in reality, you have to do more. So we'll go to step 4, which is to review, repeat, and report. So review, this means you have to go back to your current options and recheck your assumptions and critical path and take a look whether it's reasonable, does it make sense, is it accurate, and discuss with your project team. Once you have a better understanding for all of those schedule levels, then you can do repeat. This means that you're going to develop other options to schedule level 3, 2, and 1. And that's basically a part of the PDCA, plan, do, check, action. You will do that in loops many, many times. But the thing that I want to point out is that you have to choose the right level of schedule to develop and communicate with your project team. I know that we said that okay, we're gonna do the repeat for schedule level 3, 2, and 1. But in reality, you might not have to do all of those schedule levels. So it depends on the complexity of your projects. Sometimes you don't have to touch schedule level 3 at all, as long as you understand the critical path in that schedule. Sometimes you can just start with schedule level 2 and 1 and discuss with your project team and communicate and report to your leaders or executive level. So again, discuss the right level information is very important. The next one is about the comparison. This is an example of schedule level 2 management summary. As you can see and compare it side by side, you can see that it's very high level. You can easily notice the differences between milestones. You can also see the differences between the completion dates and also the duration of each phase of the schedule. Still very huge and high level, but it's very informative for the program team. The next one, this is the summarization for comparison, but it's for schedule level 1, which is the executive summary level. As we mentioned before, very high level, you consider start finish as a comparison. And I can say that is very useful, especially for the executive level, because sometimes they might not want to see everything in detail, but they're looking for the start, the finish, or the key phases. And also, you can also add key notes into it. Many times it's about cost that relates to each of these options. So what we've been talking so far is only about schedule. But schedule is not the only factor that you have to think about when you're trying to make a final decision of the program. Other factors could be cost, resources, technical preferences, or execution difficulty. So you have to incorporate all of this as a part of your factors to support the team decisions. But schedule options is a good start, because once you have schedule options, you can use that for the decision metric. So you can lay out multiple schedule options on one axis, and you can have multiple factors, and that could be schedule, cost, resources, or something else on other axis. And then you do the rating so that you get to the final decision of one schedule options or the program option that will be executed in this project. You can also use schedule options for the quantitative risk analysis in terms of cost and schedule. So at PMA, we have NetPoint for planning. We also have net risk so that you can do the risk analysis quantitative. You can also use schedule options as a part of your value engineering, because you will see the schedule, you will see the cost that will be changed between each options. And also, I also look at the schedule options as a tool that help you to recheck as a QA/QC versus your scope narrative. Because many times when you write down the scope narrative, you want to cross-check what the expectation in the schedule. Because many times you will see there's some limitation on the resources or cost within the schedule. So you want to align your schedule and your scope narrative. And that could be for consultants or for contractors. So in closing today, we have covered key considerations for planning, top-down, bottom-up, and some multiple schedule layouts to address all of those key considerations that we discussed at the very beginning. And from my experience, I think the key important elements of the planning is that we have to discuss the right level information with the right people at the right time. And also in the market, you have multiple planning tools that you can choose, but using the right tool that can glue the project team together by encouraging the team collaboration and communication would be a plus for the program team. Also, the important element is about the people. Definitely if you can have the people and the program team that knows about planning and scheduling concept at the very beginning, is great. However, in reality, the project is huge and you cannot expect anyone to know everything from day one. So for me, the important key element of the people is that the people should be open-minded and eager to learn and improve for the entire length of the project, because eventually it's the people who run the project. So now let's address your questions.
Yeah, that was fantastic, Lee. Thank you so much for presenting. We do have some questions from the attendees, and I will read them to you for your response.
Yeah.
The first question asks, do you ever run into problems when managing different schedule levels with different people? How do you manage it?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that definitely, first of all, it depends on the complexity of the project. But how you can manage is that you have to try to understand the expectations or what they are looking for. I know that even if we say that level 1 for the executives, level 2 for management, level 3 for people working day to day. However, we don't know exactly what they're looking for. The executive level and executive team might want to look at something in more detail. So first of all, you have to take a look at what they're looking for, so that you can take a look at your schedule level 3 to 1, whether those can be can support the thing that they are looking for. I can also say that many times you might not be able to use just that particular schedule level. For example, if they're looking for an answer to a question from the executive level, but you have schedule level 2, 1 page, but schedule level 3 in multiple pages, and we're not expecting to report all of that to the executive team to answer just 1 question. So many times, what I've been doing is that we're gonna create a fragment that could answer that question from the executive level. So that could be a mix between schedule level 2 and 3. So you pick just reasonable activities from schedule level 2 and also reasonable activities from schedule level 3, doing it on a separate sheet or a separate NetPoint, and do reasonable links into it so that you can better answer and support what the executive team are looking for.
Yes, that makes sense. You've mentioned risk assessment, quantitative risk analysis. When do you apply those schedule options to the risk analysis model?
Yeah, so usually we need to have schedule option first before going to the quantitative risk analysis. That's one thing. And also we don't want to pick just one schedule options to do the risk analysis. We should do all of the schedule option, multiple risk analysis, because each of the option would have its own unique criteria and risk elements, different risk rating. The other element is also you need to have risk register before doing the quantitative risk analysis. And the schedule options that you'll be using for the quantitative risk analysis might not be exactly the same as your schedule level 1, 2, or 3, because usually we'll do a summarization of schedule level 3. And you have to go back and cross-check with your risk register. So take a look at only red risk or significant risk in your risk register, and then take a look at the summarization of the schedule. The schedule for the quantitative risk analysis should be the schedule that includes key components of the schedule, critical paths, key elements. And then you have to cross-check between the risk items that you identify in the risk register and take a look if that can apply to your summary schedule. If not, then you need to add more activities into it. So basically, before doing the quantitative risk analysis, you need schedule options and also the risk register with the risk rating.
Understood, thank you. The next says, great presentation, Is the level 3 schedule you showed all in one NetPoint schedule file? Are the level 1 and level 2 schedules in that same NetPoint schedule file?
No, they're separated. So I have schedule level 3 in one file, multiple pages. Then I have a separate file for schedule level 2, separate file for schedule level 1. I used to do a mix. I used to do schedule level 3 and 2, but sometimes it's too much. So separating out would be also better in some cases. And also by doing a separation, you can do a comparison, especially for the level 2. You can bundle all of the options from level 3 to one page level 2 with multiple options at the same time. So yeah, I do it separately.
Got it. Next reads, how do you incorporate cost elements in NetPoint?
Yeah, so in NetPoint, you can do cost and resource loading as a linear. So you can either put it, sometimes we do it as per person, sometimes we do it as grouping. So you take a look at the schedule, depends on the phase. What I can say that's usually I would do it in level 2 or 1. We're not doing level 3 loading that much, but again, it depends on the complexity of the project.
Sure. And the final question I have here asks, when will you use NetPoint and when will you use P6?
Yeah, in many of our projects, we use both, but we usually use NetPoint in planning because that's the tool that anyone can see and is much more interactive. So NetPoint for planning, and then the P6 will be used for reporting as a database, because not everyone that can read and understand P6. And if you're using only P6 that the schedulers or the project control can understand, it's not going to be beneficial for the program team. We should use a program or schedule that anyone can understand to encourage team communication. And also the NetPoint planning, I usually use it 2 ways. The first one is the real planning, interactive planning session. So I will share my screen. The people on the other side can also request to do the control and adjust the schedule. And that's one thing. The other way that I usually do is doing the planning, but it's in meetings. So basically I would share my screen, NetPoint, half of the screen. The other half, that would be the meeting minutes. So I'll be doing the minutes exactly the same time as doing the schedule adjustment. So you can cross-check between the schedule that you are seeing in NetPoint and also the meeting minutes so that the people can understand what's going on in this project.
Great, thank you so much, Wee. That completes our questions. Thank you for the presentation on design, planning, and decision-making for a water tunnel program with NetPoint. Do you have any final words for our attendees?
Yeah, sure. So before ending my session today, I want to leave you with one of my favorite quotes, and that's from Harvard Edward Lecoq. No one can whistle a symphony. It takes a whole orchestra to play it. Thank you so much.